Good afternoon. This is Victoria Beale with the Ohio Ltap Center, and I'm so pleased to have with me today a group of colleagues from Northwestern Ohio. This is the Northwest Ohio APWA COVID-19 Virtual Discussion Lunch and Learn webinar. And we have a fantastic group that will be talking with you today. I'm going to go over a couple of housekeeping items, and I'm going to turn things over to Kim. First off, I'd like to start out by asking everybody who is a participant attendee to please look for the question box in the GoToWebinar panel. And if you wouldn't mind, drop me a hi or hello in there. I just want to make sure you know where this is at, because this is how we would like for you to ask questions of the presenters. And we are going to take questions all throughout the Lunch and Learn, but we'll be actually reading them off to the presenters at the end. So just make sure you put your questions in there, and I'll make sure that they get read off to everyone. The other thing I wanted to mention is that after the webinar completes, hopefully the technology will work and we'll have a recording of this. And if it does happen, I'll be able to get an email link out to you. But if not, you are here in person and able to hear the information firsthand. So take advantage of that. Make sure you ask questions. So Kim, I believe that's all I have right now. I'll turn things over to you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everybody. We're so excited that Northwest Ohio APWA is able to offer this. And we want to thank the speakers that we have today for taking their time to be with us and give us some insight. What they're going to talk to you about today is the past, how things started with COVID and what happened, and then where they're at today and how it's going to change the business for the future for their entity. So we're really excited about this, and we hope you enjoy it, and make sure you ask questions. So we're going to start with the commissioner from the city of Toledo.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abed Semaan. I'm the Commissioner of Field Operations for the City of Toledo, the Department of Public Utilities. Field operations consist of three divisions: water distribution, sewer and drainage services, and environmental services. And before we get started with the past, present, and future, I just want to let you know that I wish I was paid more attention that it is a lunch and learn. I did not bring a lunch, so hopefully I'll be able to learn. But we appreciate you being on with us. We're going to turn our attention to the second slide that we have. Just give you a short outline of who we are. The Department of Public Utilities has 7 divisions. We are responsible for the treatment of the drinking water and the wastewater. And as you see on your slide, our drinking water, we have water lines 1,190 miles. The storage capacity for our drinking water is 70 million gallons, and the plant capacity is 120 million in gallons. Our wastewater operations are the sanitary sewer is 1,100 miles of sewer lines, and the treatment capacity of our plant is 130 million gallons. Now, certainly the challenges that we faced across the city of Toledo DPU, and in particular the field operations divisions, are not different than what many of you had to face. And basically, when it first started, it was something new we never dealt with before, and we did not have clear plans of how to deal with it. So it was trial and error, learn as we go. But one thing that we learned very quickly is that PPE supplies, especially hand sanitizers, gloves, became a rare commodity. So we had to pull our talents and resources throughout the city to be able to obtain gloves, masks, sanitizers for our employees. And the following slide will show that we went through experimentation period of how do we arrange the workforce. We tried for our shifts with all personnel, and that proved to be not effective. And the reason for that, because we were running out of gloves, masks, all the PPE supplies that we had. So we had to change the plans, and we tried also having staff come 1 week and rotate weeks. But also that proved to be challenging as well, but it was better than splitting the days in 4-hour shifts. We quickly moved across the city. We had to make adjustments to see what can we do in order for our employees to work remotely. So the mayor instituted a state of emergency and exercised it when it came to purchasing options, because we needed to get our hands on as many technology as faster as we can in order to accommodate all our employees that will be working remotely. And that was a success. But we needed to make sure that the employees are taken care of, not just being able to perform their duties, but also are concerned for the welfare. So we encouraged all employees, if they are feeling sick, to stay home. The city was willing and generous to give each and every employee an 80-hour of COVID-19. That's the slide number 4. You'll see that, and that is paid by the city without the employee having to use their own accumulated sick time or vacation time. We started scanning the temperatures of the employees as they walk into the buildings. And what we did is make sure that we staggered the time, so that way we are maintaining the social distancing. Remember, we said we faced difficulties in obtaining specifically sanitizer. So what we did is kind of refitted things at our water treatment plant, and the folks there did a fantastic job in making sanitizers for the use of the city employees. We had to make quick changes in the way we do business. So visits to homes was limited, only in cases of extreme emergencies that we will go into a customer's home to change a water meter or read the meter or do any other kind of work. And to lessen the exposure of the employees, we allowed them to take city vehicles home, that in the past we did not, but that way it gives them more flexibility to be able to respond to their needed either emergencies or needed tasks that they have directly from home without exposing themselves to any danger. So where are we at now? The slide entitled present, you will see that as we all know, prevention is the best medicine. So we took every step we can to prevent the spread of COVID. One of these things we had to do is, as a change has affected not just the closeness of the workstations, but also we had to take into consideration the effect of this pandemic on our budget, and it really necessitated the temporary emergency leave for 326 employees throughout the city. That hit field operations deeply because out of 310 positions that we have employees in the field operations between the 3 divisions, we had 100 employees on TEL or temporary emergency leave. Certainly that forced us to concentrate only on critical and essential functions of the divisions, and that has been going very well. But in the meantime, we had to rethink and reevaluate our priorities. And as a result of that, we brought some of those employees back to work in order to maintain our delivery of services and quality service to our citizens. Now we have available safety items, and that's a credit to our safety group in DPU and throughout the city. There was a coordination in pulling resources together, putting things, if you may, into one inventory stock room, and then it is divided and sent to the divisions when they need it. So that was very, very effective. Right now, we are in the midst of putting a plan together where we have a lot of employees working from home and able to either through VPN or remote desktop work. We're working on a transitioning some of our employees back to the office, at the same time trying to maintain social distancing. One of the things that we did, we thought of social distancing, that it's really not, in my opinion, a good term, because we wanted the employees to continue to interact with one another. So one thing we did is encourage the employees to use the technology that I'm sure we're all now taking advantage of, and that is video conferencing, to make sure that they communicate with one another. One of the things I encouraged our divisions to do as well is even take the time throughout the day to video conference with your colleagues, with your coworkers, even if it is just for a coffee break. That way, that interaction and team spirit continues to be effective in accomplishing the tasks. And I don't want to forget what's mentioned at the end of this slide. The city issued a $30 stipend for masks. We provided masks, but this is on top of that. That way employees can purchase their own. Also, as we maintain social distancing, employees were directed to only one occupant per vehicle. And that made it very challenging because we do not have enough vehicles for all the employees. But with the reduction of our workforce, we're able to accommodate that. Also, we instituted the use of face shields that we were able to obtain to be used and incorporated when social distancing is not an option. What does that really mean? You cannot have employees working on replacing a valve or fixing a sewer line or fixing a water main. You can't have them distant from each other. So face masks have become integral to them accomplishing their tasks. I know at water treatment plant, we instituted a 12-hour shifts to provide still the consistency, the constancy of delivering of services, but also to be able to accommodate social distancing. Now, what is the future for us and for all of us? Really, this pandemic allowed us to learn lessons and forced us out of our comfort zones when it comes to how do we do things. We've always relied on this is how we've done it in the past. Okay, we need to make changes. But this pandemic forced us to adapt and adjust quickly and rethink how we are conducting business. I know in the 3 divisions, we are looking at what does our work landscape look like after COVID? And I'll share with you that we are thinking of things that 6 months ago we would not have even considered. So what does that mean? It means that we are taking advantage. You know what they say, when you're given lemon, you make lemonade. So we have learned how to make lemonade out of COVID. Our workstations, our working from home are all options right now that we are considering. Do we have it all figured out? I know you know that we don't. It's learning and work in process in progress, but we are rethinking operations. How can we do it better? Challenges to us, and COVID was an opportunity. And I give credit to our director, Ed Moore. Don't waste a crisis. What that means for us now is let's benefit from the lessons learned and implement changes that will make us a better utility for our staff and for our citizens as well. And one thing, you don't see it on this slide, but to me, what COVID mean, it doesn't mean a pandemic anymore. It means a situation we were forced into, but I took the liberty of changing what COVID is in my mind. COVID became a really just a short to concentrate on vision, innovation, and dare to challenge your own comfort zone and your own plans. So I hope you'll keep that in mind as well, that COVID is no longer the bad pandemic that it is, but it is something that will help us to concentrate on vision, innovation, and dare us to challenge our comfort zones and rethink the way we do business to make us better. That's all I have. We look forward to your questions. I want to thank APWA for putting this together and for inviting me. And now we'll turn it back over to Kim. And thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very interesting, and it's nice to hear what the city of Toledo has been doing. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Kim Roessner. I work for the Ohio Department of Transportation for 28 years, and I'm the current Northwest Ohio APWA president. So we're just really excited to do this for you. Everybody, if you stay the whole webinar, then you will get a certificate, and if you need to use those for CPDs or whatever you need it for, you'll have that, but you have to stay for the whole presentation. So with that, make sure you get your questions in from the last speaker, and we're going to turn it over to Springfield Township Administrator.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks to the APWA and Kim Roessner, Amy Wood, Victoria Beale for having the knowledge and the opportunity to be in front of you. I want to thank our other my distinguished colleagues, the other presenters. I don't have a PowerPoint, so you get to look at this ugly mug right here for a little bit, but in order, for us to get through this, I'll be as brief as possible, because you're going to hear some redundancy from all the presenters because COVID, it brought challenges to all of us. However, the reactions from each entity and how they minimize the exposure and the spread of COVID are quite similar. So with Springfield Township, before COVID hit, we had a lot of momentum here. Our morale was very high. Our revenue sources were doing well for us, and it allowed us to do some things that we had on our master plan or our long range plan, such as looking at, maybe not looking, but starting the process of building a new public service facility, which is well needed here at Springfield Township as we continue to grow. Another opportunity we have is to improve Airport Highway, which many of you probably know if you shop in the area. That is in Springfield Township, and it's an area where we're fortunate to be able to draw some revenue from, but we still have to maintain that aesthetic look. So we had that vision to make that more aesthetically pleasing. And most importantly, we were looking to add more recreational space. We had revenue. We purchased some properties. So our constituents here at Springfield Township were looking and asked for more recreational space. So that momentum that we had, we were looking for 2020 to be a really great spot for our constituents and a huge light for that to come on for Springfield Township in order, for people to continue to live here, work here, and play here. What else that we had momentum with was we're invested in the new Dorr Street interchange. We're a local partner, and that also gave us a revenue source. We put a TIF in place. We've got a JED D that's there as well. And even though it's with construction and they're moving quite rapidly on that interchange, our developer experienced some shortfalls. So that has decreased the momentum that they had. We were hoping that development was going to occur in concert with the interchange, so that when the interchange opened up, the development was going to be there. However, there's a stall to it. So that alone has hurt us. So with that being said, what we have now, we have proven revenue losses, such as our joint economic development zone, our JED D that I just mentioned, the TIF not producing funds in order for us to all get paid back for the investment in the interchange. We have hotel revenue that we're not going to be receiving. The local government fund will decrease. Gas tax revenue and the license tax revenue. All these revenues that we're projecting shortfalls from are what keeps townships alive. We don't have that privilege of a municipality to have that residential income tax, and that's why people like townships, I suppose. Another huge hurdle was our OPWC road project. It was in jeopardy for this year. However, just hearing this word this week that the state has approved the resources for project round 33 and the state capital improvement program. But with that being said, now what we have to do is scale back other projects in order to do the road project. And maybe you are, maybe you're not informed, but townships have, by statute, have two requirements. One is to maintain roads, and the other one is to have cemeteries. All these other things that townships do, all the other services, they're not required by statute, but it makes a great place for people to live. So with that being said, our road project is a priority. So some of the things that we wanted to do for our residents are now put on the back burner. But again, it's something that we're looking at as not permanent. It's a culture change for a moment, and we're going to regroup and move on. With that being said, where we're at now, first and foremost, what we had to do, as you just heard from Abed, we had to educate and prepare our employees. We had to figure out who's essential and who's non-essential, and by doing that, we scaled back our public service department. We brought them in groups of twos where they maintained as groups of twos, kept the social distancing. They were on a two-person rotation schedule, so the crew may work twice a week, or they may have worked once a week. All depends on how that schedule came about. But everybody was on call, and everybody was available throughout those normal working hours. One thing that I want to point out is our fire chief did a really nice job preparing our fire and EMS personnel. They were equipped. They were ready to handle the challenge as they always are. But something here in Springfield Township, COVID-19 became a reality right away, as we had the first casualty in Lucas County was transported from Springfield Township, and the casualty happened here in Lucas County. So we quickly learned what quarantining was about. Our crews, were engaged. And again, with the quarantine, it came quickly, so it was an education in process. But again, kudos to our fire department. They continue to make the calls and battle through it. For our office staff, we had to put a plan in place in order for Springfield Township to continue to operate and continue to serve. As many of you know, public works and the public entities, we don't shut down. We closed our office for a bit, but we still had access through a Dropbox, and we also had our phones on, and there was abilities for people that needed us, our constituents who needed us, to get a hold of us and continue to do some sort of business. And with that being said, we were very fortunate. Before the pandemic hit, we were already set up with technology to be able to work remotely. So our employees that we excused from our office still had the ability to maintain their workload and doing it from home and trying to stay safe. We had requirements that we drafted, work from home requirements, like many of you probably have, and we had video conference staff meetings, every morning. We scaled that back to every other morning, but we all stayed in contact. And again, as you heard previously, that video conference became a reality quite quickly to everyone, and we were quickly caught up with, and we're still not good at it, but with how video conference is changing the world. But again, the guides and the implementation of the plan, at least with our Springfield Township employees, went rather smoothly. Everyone took it seriously. They continue to take it seriously, and we're having, I guess you can call cooperation a good word, at least for us here, that everybody is on the same page. Another challenge that came about for us, and primarily my seat here, was to educate our elected officials. We're required to continue to hold those public meetings, and now that consisted of video conference, which a lot of our public officials, our elected officials, have other jobs. They may not have jobs where they're tech savvy, so that came with a challenge as we managed and engaged with our constituents throughout these meetings, and how we could do it safely, how we could do it with security. So that was a challenge, and it continues to be a challenge. We're open for business now. We're holding our public meetings in person now. However, we have guidelines in place with social distancing and masks that are required. But it was important for us to get back to work and try to get back to some kind of normalcy, if normalcy is ever going to be a good word again. And finally, we had to maintain the trust with our general public. We had to get that, continue to guide our public that Springfield Township is here to serve. We didn't want our public to feel that we were taking this opportunity or the COVID pandemic as a relaxed time for Springfield Township employees just to not get anything done. So we continue to work, we continue to educate, we continue to let our general public know that we're here to help. And quite honestly, we received nothing but great feedback because of that. Some internal impacts from COVID was the canceling of our rental facilities. So all those reservations that we had taken throughout the year, our staff had to make those calls to these people who had whether it be weddings, whether it be graduation and things of that nature, and make that call to where, you know, we can't hold these events. Again, with COVID-19 and our people understanding where we're at, we didn't have too much pushback. However, once we were able to open with our facilities, the calls really came in and flooded our office, which is okay. Some of the other impacts that we have here at Springfield Township, we've got a park, Homecoming Park, that's dear to us. Not to mention we've got multiple other neighborhood parks. Those we had to close off. By doing that, especially at this time of the year where youth softball, baseball, adult leagues want to get out and play, you know, we had to keep it closed. We had to close off all the playgrounds, as you know. So basically everything that every day that the governor came out with orders, we were watching them closely, and we had to abide by those orders, as this is a fluid situation. You know, there was some heartache to it, but fortunately, we're looking to get back open. And finally, one of the events that we hold annually is our Freedom Celebration, which is a huge event here in Springfield Township. We have children's activities, we have countless food trucks, we have a fireworks show that we have at the end, and it's a nice community event. And unfortunately, regretfully, we had to cancel that. We waited. We were the last community to cancel, but with the concerns of security and safety, being the only show in town, we probably would have got flooded with people that typically wouldn't come to our show. So we took the measures of closing that off. But again, it was regretfully doing so. You know, moving towards the future, we're not any different from any other community. As I mentioned, it's a very fluid situation. Our day-to-day business has changed. Our activities have changed. The way we approach our office, the way we approach our public service, the way we approach our fire and EMS, and other things that's all changed. But it's changed in a manner to where we're prepared for it. We're prepared for our duties. We're prepared to approach the general public. And one thing that we're getting back to a systematic approach to gaining back the momentum that we had before COVID hit, which is huge here at Springfield. And as I mention all the time to our team, it's going to take teamwork to do it. And I know we can do it, and I know all these other entities can do it. Sometimes we feel like we come in here and we fail, even before COVID-19. Sometimes we feel like we fail, but it keeps a strong team, which we have here at Springfield Township, to gain back that momentum. And we're going to succeed. We're going to be positive, and we're going to continue to make COVID-19 a learning lesson, and continue to move forward. So with that, a couple other things that we do here. We continue to stay engaged with our business community, which is huge to us. We offer support when needed. We're out knocking on doors. What do you need from Springfield Township? And that shows a lot of character on our part, and it lets them know that we're here as a tool. We're here to comfort. We may not have all the answers, but we damn sure can find some. But for the most part, we've been very fortunate. As I said earlier, with that momentum, we were in a spot where we didn't have to furlough any employees. We were able to pay our employees that work from home, so nobody lost a paycheck. And by us being able to be in that spot, the morale here at Springfield has not dwindled a bit with COVID-19. We continue to try to be a model for our residents, and we're going to continue that. So with that, I think you heard enough from this guy here, and I'll turn it back over to Kim.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I think we'll just go ahead and turn it over to the Lucas County engineer.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Niewski. I'm the Lucas County engineer. And like Mike and Abed said, I think what this crisis and what COVID-19 has taught us is the need that we have to work with each other and coordinate with each other. And Mike said it best, is in terms of teamwork, not just teamwork within your own organization, but teamwork with your colleagues and everyone around the state, with our townships and municipalities and other county engineers. I've really found through this crisis how important teamwork is, and how important it is to lean on each other and get best practices from each other. Because we were all kind of flying in the blind and trying to learn as we went along, and just the tips and the support and the teamwork I had from our staff and from others really helped to make this crisis as least disruptive of I think that it could be. In terms of the past, when we first had the governor's order, we sent all our employees home. So like Mike said, we didn't lay anybody off. We haven't laid any of our full-time employees off. We've laid off part-time employees, and some of our seasonal employees were not retained. But in terms of our full-time workforce, we're fortunate enough that we haven't had to lay anybody off since this started. And everyone's always received their paycheck, and it's been great in terms of, again, our morale and the fact that we're able to take care of our employees to be able to continue to serve the citizens of Lucas County. For our garage, we went to basically 3-man crews. We actually went and asked for volunteers, people who wanted to essentially work in terms of 3-man crews every day. Just basically rotated 3 people every day. That for a person became a team, and we basically scheduled teams. We were fortunate enough that all of our employees volunteered to take those shifts. So it really is a testament. I gave it as an option if they wanted to stay home and take care of their families. That was totally up to them. But all of our employees, stepped up to the plate, and they understood that they're here to serve the citizens, and they all stood up and worked. May not worked every day, but they worked. So we had 3-man crews that were working daily for about 2 weeks, and then for about 6 weeks. And then we went to, when we had the governor's order that we could start kind of transitioning into a more regular style of business. We've gone to 4 to 6 person crews, and those crews stay together. So, in terms of both social distancing and contact tracing, we basically made the decision to kind of keep those crews together, and they're a crew that'll be together for at least a 2-week period of time. So it's forced us to really think about how we schedule our work and the type of work we're going to do, so that those crews can essentially stay together for at least a 2-week period of time, in case something does go wrong, that 1, we don't lose our entire workforce, and then 2, that we kind of know who worked together and when, so it gives us an easy way to go through and determine social distance, to determine contact tracing. We actually had an outbreak in our office. So in an outside event, outside in our office, our bargaining unit employees were in the same place at the same time. And one of the members of that bargaining unit had COVID. Basically was diagnosed and passed a COVID test a few days after that event. So basically we had kind of a contact tracing exercise here in the office. And what we kind of found out is that people have difficulty remembering 2 or 3 or 4 days previous how much time they spent with people, how much what contact they had with people, what they did with people. And we basically made the decision to take a abundance of caution. We basically sent our entire bargaining unit home for 2 weeks. And, with that, it really put pressure on us in terms of teamwork to kind of notify our adjacent townships, if there was an emergency or something like that, that someone would have to cover. Our non-bargaining unit people, our supervisory staff and others would have to maybe have to step up to the plate and do some things in an emergency situation. We're very fortunate that during that 14-day period, we had nothing of significant consequence that required us to do that. We were able to handle it with our own staff. but it does go to show the importance of kind of keeping track of your staff and how they're together, so that if you do have an outbreak or somebody does get diagnosed with COVID, that you have a way and kind of a backup plan to be able to deal with things and to find a way to continue to deliver services to the public. Our office staff went to 100% telework. We've continued to offer telework to all of our office staff, and most of our office staff has taken advantage of that. You know, up until the time where people were allowed to return to work in mid-May, a lot of people made the decision that are still continuing telework, and some people are making the decision to come in for 2 or 3 days a week, just to basically get back into the office environment, and then doing telework a few other days a week with a lot more flexibility. All of our submittals, again, are 100% electronic. So when this COVID hit, we never stopped taking submittals. We never stopped serving the public. We never stopped trying to process the permits and inspections and everything else that we have to do out of this office. But we did basically close down the office, at least for about a month period of time, where we were 100% telework, where no one was present in our facilities, to the point where you know, people are in our facilities, but we're still only accepting all of our submittals electronically, both in terms of electronic submittals and in terms of electronic payments. We're kind of fortunate that when we went into this, we kind of were starting to think about those things and doing some pilot programs and testing about doing electronic submittals and electronic payments. We had all that stuff set up and ready to go. And it really helped us in terms of serving the public, that when COVID hit, that we were able to basically put that out right away. And we're still able to serve the public pretty seamlessly. Some people had some difficulty transitioning to that. I think now that we're kind of transitioning, doing another type of transition in terms of you know, more interaction and those sort of things, we don't intend to open our office to the public, at least through the summer. We're going to continue to offer electronic submittals and electronic processing. Like was mentioned earlier, we had difficulty getting PPE at first. We actually became kind of scroungers and looked all over the place to try to find PPE. Took a lot of innovation to try to get PPE, you know, in terms of disinfectants, you know, starting to make your own. We worked with the building trades to work with some local suppliers to make hand sanitizers. So, you know, we're getting all of our PPE from local sources through innovation. And this really worked out in terms of, you know, kind of looking outside our normal supply chains to try to get the things that we need to be able to serve, do the things we need to keep ourselves running every day. Kind of some lessons learned that we got and things that we were implementing here in the present is, again, the stress on teamwork and the fact that we really need to work together to make things successful. Coordination is key. I think I've talked more with fellow county engineers, local, you know, nearby county engineers, with ODOT, with the city of Toledo, with all of our townships. I think we've done a lot more in terms of coordinating and working together than I think we have in the past. And I think that's a really big positive of what this crisis has done, is it's forced us to talk to each other more and share ideas and you know, get to know each other better. And I think that's really going to pay dividends in the future. It's also forced us to change how we manage. You know, a lot of it, I think we got kind of complacent. A lot of people got complacent in, you know, seeing people there and, you know, seeing if they're working. It's really forced us to try to think about managing by objectives and goals and deadlines and whether they're met or not, and really unleash people's potential to do what they need to do to get things done. It doesn't touch on the fact that you need to keep in contact with people and to answer questions or those sort of things, but it's really forced, I know, a lot of people in terms of their management style to kind of extend that trust to people and to let them do what they need to do to achieve the goals that are needed to be done. It's also forced us as managers to give a lot more clearer guidance on what needs to be performed, because you don't have the interaction that's what you have. And it's kind of changed, you know, both my management style and others' management styles, as well as our worker styles, about the type of questions they should ask and in the type of clarity that they need in terms of managing their workload, no matter whether it's here in the office or out out in the field or those sort of things. It's really changed in terms of thinking, in terms of what we need to do to manage our work and to accomplish what we need to do to serve the public. It's also kind of taught us about the need that we have for technology and how beneficial technology is. Like I said, we were really in the steps to be able to roll into better technology. And this has really forced us to take a look at other ways to use technology to basically serve the public better. So, we found in our processes and the things that we do, things that we can use to improve and use technology to improve those processes, both that we can implement easier here in the present with the technology we have available, and also in the future about technology we need to acquire to be able to both help manage our own workflows here in the office, but also to better communicate with the public about what workflows are in terms of things like development reviews and inspections and inspection scheduling and permits and permit workflows. It's really forced us to be able to think about, the best ways that we can monitor things internally, as well as how that we can basically give the public a better sense of what our workflows are and where their piece of the puzzle is in the process. I'm sure Pat will touch on this, and others have touched on this in terms of revenue. The crisis has really thrown our revenue projections in flux. We've had to deal with that just like everyone else has. Kind of the deal with us as the county engineer's office is we're totally dependent on gas taxes and permissive fees, license plate fees. And both those things, what we know we're going to get lag. So we have a 3-month lag in terms of gas tax. So we're kind of guessing what type of revenues we'll receive 3 months into the future. And then with permissive tax fees, that's dependent on people renewing license plates. And while the electronic method was still available, we found that most people still go to the deputy registrar's offices to actually renew their plates. And there's a lot of uncertainty about how many people will renew their plates now that the offices are open, or how long it will take them to do so. And it has forced us to take a look at our priorities in terms of the work and the contracts we were going to let. Some have been delayed. We haven't canceled any contracts, but there were some that were in the bidding process that we pulled back until we had more certainty. We stand to lose about $2 to $3 million. It's about 15% of our budget. We have to kind of pull back and see what we need to do to be able to make things work. And we may have to delay some projects into 2021 or 2022, depending on how the future revenues look and the projections that we have in the future. Just like the same thing, it's kind of forced us to do things in terms of temperature scanning. We scan temperatures every day. We have a questionnaire that every employee fills out. We found that helpful because, one, the temperature scanning, ensures that, people either are not coming down with symptoms or something will have an outbreak in the office. But the actual filling out of the questionnaire is helpful because that helps the health department in terms of what they need to do in terms of contact tracing. So who was in the office and when. And, kind of some future lessons learned is, one is that we realized that paperless is the future. I think a lot of people have realized that, to utilize technology to make paperless in the future in terms of tracking, both for the benefit of the public and management. We found out that telework is not a panacea. It's nice in theory, but there are some things that face-to-face just can't, you need that face-to-face time, that face-to-face interaction. So we're finding that staggered schedules is definitely a better way to go to get that interaction you need, but it still allow people to manage their risk in terms of COVID. And then another kind of lesson we learned is that we're definitely in a new normal. I think a lot of people, both internally and externally, are finding hard to grasp that we are in a new normal and that things will not be the same in the future. And kind of managing those expectations about what we can give in terms of both internally and the public is something that's a challenge, a management challenge, to basically manage people's expectations and what they can get and how things will work and the processes that will be used in the future. And kind of the last thing is that, again, it's trying to stress is, again, the need to work together. We're we're finding out that we're stronger working together. I think a lot of us prior to COVID were kind of in our silos. You know, they did their thing, we did our thing, they did their things. This kind of shows that the need that, you know, we're stronger by being together. So with that, thanks a lot, Kim, and look forward to everyone else, and thank everyone else for their input.
Okay, thank you very much. Don't forget to get your questions in, type those in, and we will address those at the end. So now I'm going to turn it over to the Ohio Department of Transportation, District 2 Deputy Director.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks again to the Northwest Ohio chapter of the APWA, specifically Victoria Beale and Kim Roessner with ODOT, and Amy Wood with the City of Toledo for organizing this event. My name is Pat McColley. I'm the ODOT District 2 Deputy Director. A brief overview of ODOT. There's 12 districts throughout the state, and District 2 is comprised of of 8 counties in Northwest Ohio, and those include Williams, Henry, Fulton, Lucas, Wood, Seneca, Sandusky, and Ottawa County. And District 2 employs around 370 employees. So I guess I'm going to start and kind of separate out my talk into 2 different things. One, how we do things operationally with folks that cannot telework. And then I'm also going to talk about some of the telework arrangements that we've had to go through. So there was a lot of movement that happened very quickly here at ODOT and around the state in regards to COVID-19. Obviously, as everyone knows, ODOT is an agency of the state, and our Chief Executive Officer is Governor Mike DeWine. So developments with us were ongoing right in line with his messaging and his 2 p.m. press conferences. So again, I'm going to talk first about teleworking and how quickly things were developing. So Thursday morning, March 12th, we had our senior leadership meeting, which is all the deputy directors around the state, including the assistant directors and our director, Director Jack Marchbanks. Our chief of staff told us all that they're working on a telework policy, and we're going to have an expedited review period of 5 days instead of our typical 10, and we may never have to use it. So that was Thursday morning. Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock, Governor Mike DeWine comes on and says that all capable telework employees should telework, and we should start as soon as Monday. So that's how quickly things were moving in Columbus and how quickly things were moving for us in District 2. So that night, we quickly identified approximately 100 employees that could telework in District 2. And scheduled a district-wide Skype call for 8:30 the next morning to discuss some of these arrangements. So as you can imagine, we've used Skype and, now Microsoft Teams and all these other platforms for various reasons, but we really never have had 100+ person conference calls until that moment. And we've subsequently had 7 district-wide conference calls inviting all 370 employees to them, and those have gone over very well, and I'll talk a little bit more about them later. So our District 2 executive team's 2 biggest messages that day, and they really carry forward to today, first one was ability, capability, and willingness. And by ability, I mean, does the position warrant and have the ability to be done remotely? A large majority of our positions do not, but again, about 100 people we identified do have the ability with their position descriptions to be done remotely and what they do. The second one's capability. Do you as an employee have the capabilities to work from home? Do you have internet? Do you have an decent internet connection? We have a lot of laptops, but a lot of our designers do not. They're not using laptops necessarily, they're using desktops, so they would have to have their own desktop to utilize and remote desktop in. And then the last was the willingness. So are you willing to make this work? Because if you're not willing to make this work, and we want to throw a bunch of hurdles and obstacles and other things, then we need to talk through that. And if you're not willing to make this work, then it's not going to work. The second item that we really messaged hard was you need to be nimble and flexible. So a lot of our telework employees, a large majority of them are engineers and planners. I'm an engineer myself, and many times our engineers and planners want everything planned 2 or 3 months out and exact details and everything else. we all know going through this that that's just not possible. We have to somewhat roll with the punches. We have to evaluate the ground game and make decisions on the ground. And many of those decisions are being made by the governor's office and the Ohio Department of Health. So with that in mind, we need to be nimble and flexible as we move forward, because things will change, and we have to be able to adapt. Our IT staff was incredible. We pretty much had everybody out the door by Wednesday. So if you would have told me on Thursday of the week before or Friday that we were going to have almost everyone out the door by Wednesday, I would have said, you're crazy, there's no way. But our IT staff did a great job in both in central office and the district. And then as things progressed, there was a firmer push to get people out the door that can work from home. So some challenges we had with teleworking. Again, many of our engineers in design have a desktop due to their CAD software. They need something a little bit more heavy duty than just a laptop. Network issues, both on ODOT's network and licenses for VPN software and some other things, as well as network issues at people's houses. VPN, which is virtual private network for those that don't know. A lot of people, we had one already, which is great, but not a lot of people have used it. I've used it frequently, but trying to get people up to speed on how to log into the virtual private network. And then monitors. Most of our designers, most of the folks in ODOT District 2 have at least two monitors. And so that was another issue that we kind of had to overcome. So good things that we already had going for us. We, and when I say we, I really mean our IT folks in central office and the districts, have kind of been not maybe planning exactly for this, but planning to do more remote work. We already had a Citrix remote desktop software, so I can get my personal computer and log in to ODOT. And actually you use your home computer to do all the work, but all the work's actually being done on ODOT computers in the ODOT office. So essentially you're just viewing what's happening on an ODOT computer. So we already had those capabilities. We haven't really utilized them, but we were already out of the gate there. So that was good to start implementing so people could get out the door quickly. The VPN, again, the virtual private network. Many employees that did not have heavy design processing power already had laptops. So as an organization, it's just easy to push those laptops out and use a program called Dual Mobile for our VPN software, and just had to bring people up to speed and train them quickly on that. Kronos is our time management system. I think that has done wonders in this environment, because people can actually clock on their computer and clock out. So it's a little bit easier to make people a little bit more accountable to their time, but also track the time. And then Skype, again, I mentioned before, we had a number of district-wide conference calls. We nor any district have ever done that before. And we had well over 200 callers, and I'm sure some people were sharing those calls, but we're able to mute the entire audience. And that's something we learned through this process. And quite frankly, we're going to probably continue that going forward. So we have the ability to communicate the same message to everybody in the district at the exact same time. So one of the things that we identified really early is that we needed to communicate well. If we did not communicate well, it would really cause more problems, and really those communication errors and mishaps are amplified during a crisis. So striving to have that best communication will help us down the road as the situation progresses. And I think to Mike, what Mike Niewski mentioned before, that also goes into that teamwork. If we have the teamwork as a district, we have a higher calling, but we're also working on things well and communicating with each other, so we're all on the same page. That definitely helped throughout this whole process. So some of the things I wrote down is how does government think differently in the future? I will say that I've heard, and there's been seminars talking about different state DOTs and how they have operated. Washington DOT has actually allowed teleworking for quite some time. I would say that the organization, the workforce, has to think more flexible. I doubt that there's anybody on this seminar today that would say that the workplace is more flexible today than it was 10, 20 years ago. So I think that leads right into teleworking. So we need to make sure we can be flexible where we can. There's some areas we can't be, but that's a critical element there. Accountability, that's going to be one of those things that we're going to have to solve and look at and try to get over some hurdles. I somewhat jokingly tell people that, you know, the state or a lot of other agencies, they might spend $1,000 to figure out where $100 went. And there's a lot of truth to that, because we really try to account for every single dollar and dime that we spend. And time is money. So we're going to have to get past, you know, how do we hold people accountable for putting in hours? So can the government get over that hurdle? They're already doing it now. So how does that look like in the future? And one of the big things is, what does the private sector do? So if the private sector starts moving towards teleworking and, you know, reducing office footprints and stuff like that, I would imagine the government sector has to follow, especially when we're talking about attracting professional positions, administrative positions. We'll have to keep up. So I recently saw a nationwide survey of employees, not specific to any industry or sector, stated about a 1% production loss. What I'm really interested to see, as far as teleworking, and what I'm really interested to see from surveys in the future is what employers come up with. You would think that there may be a little bias towards employees, towards surveys with employees, but employers, especially the private sector employers, I'm sure will figure out the production loss they have during this, because productivity is money. And I'm really interested to see how employers see those gains and losses in productivity, and will balance that with employee recruitment, which one would think would be easier, as well as reduced building footprint size and utilities and other things. So there's definitely a trade-off there, and I'm really interested to see where the private sector goes. So that's pretty much our telework and how we quickly implemented that. We are still under, if you can telework, you should be teleworking. So we're still under telework conditions. And I see those continuing until the governor does not recommend people that can telework should telework. So I want to talk a little bit some of our other forces that don't have the ability to telework. So I talked about a lot of jobs being done remotely. Again, most of our employees have jobs that are not conducive to being done remotely. So again, District 2 has about 370 employees and about 100 can telework. So we're talking about 270 employees. The vast majority of our workforce cannot operate remotely. And specifically, that includes our highway technicians, those folks working hard on the road, fixing our roads, and maintaining our roadway system, mechanics, construction inspectors. As many of you know, up here in Northwest Ohio, we have a lot of orange barrels out there, and we have a duty to the state to make sure that contractors are putting in the construction and those bridges and roads properly. So what we really needed to focus on is, how do we change our operation to minimize exposure and keep the garages running if we did have a positive test? And Mike Niewski alluded to a lot of these things already, but I'm going to repeat some of them for what ODOT's doing. So we implemented a 1 person per vehicle rule. That presented a number of challenges. Oftentimes we have to be able to have 2 people per vehicle. So we had to get really creative as far as utilizing 1 person per vehicle. And we did, quite frankly, we are seeing productivity losses because of that. But again, we still are being productive, but we are seeing a few productivity losses. So we have softened our stance on that. If they're traveling short distances, like somebody's picking up somebody from mowing and wants to take them back to their vehicle, they can both wear masks now in the same vehicle, but we still are under a 1 person per vehicle rule. We blew out a lot of our break rooms to the garage bays. So those break rooms are small areas where it's hard to maintain 6 foot of distance. So a lot of those got blown out to our garage bays where people could spread out, easily maintain that 6 foot of social distancing, and not come in close contact with others. We implemented staggered shifts in a lot of our garages, or we had a group A and group B, and tried not to have them intermingle. So if we did get a positive COVID hit, then we wouldn't have to, it wouldn't take out an entire garage essentially for 2 weeks as they quarantine. Masks or face coverings are now required in facilities if you're not at a desk or in the garage bay. And we do have temperature check stations as you enter our facilities, whether that be the district office or any of our garages. So the COVID-19 pandemic has really provided a lot of opportunities to advance ODOT as well as a lot of these other agencies. Specifically, we're utilizing technology even more than we did before. Less paper and more digital signatures. We have expedited and already in process e-permitting platform. And we're working on remotely training our workforce. As you can imagine, ODOT is a very geographically spread out organization. And that presents some difficulties when you bring a lot of people from different garages together, as well as there's some efficiency gains if we don't have to have them travel to Columbus or travel to Bowling Green. So amongst so many other things, but these are all things that are advancing the department and would not have happened if we did not have this COVID-19 crisis. So never let a good crisis go without taking some of these opportunities. And that's what they are. They're absolutely opportunities. And at the end of the day, ODOT has to operate. And although some of these measures has caused some productivity losses, we still must keep and maintain our infrastructure system. And our construction program has to continue as well. And you see a lot of these large construction projects. I know Mike Hampton mentioned the Dorr Street interchange before, as well as the work on I-75. Those things have to continue, regardless of whether we're in a crisis or not. And, and then we have been continuing those. So some future challenges. I wanted to talk a little bit about the state and how it operates. And Mike Niewski alluded to it earlier. The general fund, which funds the vast majority of departments, is actually funded by sales and income tax. The Ohio Department of Transportation gets very little, if any, general fund money. Our money comes from the gas tax. We're very thankful that that was raised last year, or we'd be in a much deeper trouble than what we are now as an agency. But because our funding stream is different, there's different things that go along with that. We have seen a reduction at one time of 60% as far as vehicles miles traveled on our roads in District 2. That will equate down the road to reduced revenue and receipts coming in from gas. I'm sure diesel is much more steady, so that's a good thing, but the VMT was down around 60%. And as Mike Hampton mentioned earlier, that gas tax is going to really affects ODOT, but it really affects counties, townships, and municipalities. The city of Toledo receives around $6 million increase actually from the gas tax last time, and receives even more than that total. So that's going to really impact the bottom line for a lot of these agencies, and ODOT is definitely not immune from that. So we have estimated losses anywhere from 400 million to 600 million. Those are estimates. I'm hoping they're conservative. And, hopefully as we start seeing these receipts come in and things are already starting to rebound quite a bit, that those estimates will be a little high. But again, we don't know until we start seeing those receipts come in. So some of the things the state has implemented enterprise-wide, so for the entire state, all agencies, hiring freeze to see cost savings that can be realized through attrition and temporarily not filling positions. Furlough days or cost savings days in the amount of 80 hours next fiscal year, and our fiscal year starts in July. Cost of living adjustments and step freezes will also occur next fiscal year. And this is for all non-bargaining unit employees, all exempt employees. And again, a lot of it's driven by the general fund, because a lot of these departments, unlike ODOT, are funded, their expenses lie a lot in personnel costs, a lot in required costs. We have required costs too, but we have a lot of capital costs, as you can see on the roads with construction and maintenance of our infrastructure. So just for reference, I want to throw this in here. ODOT has around 5,000 employees spread out throughout the state and every county of the state. And there, I can count on one hand how many confirmed cases of COVID-19 there's been. There has been 0 confirmed cases in District 2. And so I think that speaks to taking some of these early measures and not getting hits and not having it spread. We did not end up taking any time off, and the department has not laid off anyone, and in its history has never laid off anyone. So I don't anticipate that to happen. But with that, I want to thank you all for your time. Thank you again to the Northwest Ohio APWA chapter, and I'm happy to take any questions at the end of all the presentations.
Okay, thank you, Pat. We are going to go ahead because we're running low on time here, but that doesn't mean Dave can't say what he needs to say. We're going to let you, because I think people are going to be real interested. So we're going to turn it over to the Director of Environmental Health with the Toledo-Lucas County Health Department.
Well, thank you very much, Kim and Amy, for putting this together. Very informative. What I'm going to go over is a lot that has already been talked about, but let me give you a little bit of my background. I'm Dave Walsh. I'm the Director of Environmental Health for the Toledo-Lucas County Health Department. I started my career many, many years ago with the Toledo Health Department before they merged. Worked there a few years, and then I worked for the city of Toledo as almost all the operations. I was Commissioner of Streets, Commissioner of Solid Waste, Director of Public Service, Director of Utilities. So it gave me a good perspective of what you folks are dealing with today from the idea of public works and public health. So I know the operations somewhat because I was involved in them. I know what you guys are up against. And so as we started the COVID, seeing the pandemic, we knew things were going to get kind of crazy and hairy here. We had a number of calls from municipalities and agencies on how can we protect our employees, what can we do to prevent the spread of COVID, and a lot of it you heard. I mean, really the key that you want to work on is the social distancing. Wherever you can do that and ever how you can do that. You've heard of one person in a truck, great idea. You know, if you can move desks apart, if you can put a barrier between those, if you can work from home. I mean, these are all basics things that everybody's working on. But more importantly, you heard it from Abed and Mike and Patrick about breaking up your staff into cohorts or shifts, for a better term. And I go back to when I was streets commissioner, when we went snow and ice, we divided the staff up into 2 12-hour shifts and they work separately. And you do that with the operation now, obviously not 12-hour shifts, but you break your organization up into cohorts. And you can do it either, as you've heard, different shifts. You can have one work this day and the next the other if that's possible. You can even start with staggering the shifts. So you have half the staff come in the morning at 7:30, let them get their orders and get them out of the barn. And then the next shift comes in. So they're not interacting and commingling. And Mike talked about how important it is for cost or for contact tracing. But more importantly, it is also if someone gets ill, whoever they were with, even if you're wearing masks, unless you're wearing a N95 mask that was fit tested with a face shield, which you folks aren't doing that. That's hospital, what they do in hospitals. Those people that were in close contact for a long exposure of time, we would tell you to quarantine those people for 14 days. So you could lose a whole group of people if you did not break them apart. And never how you do that. You know, the shifts, even what we did here, because we knew this was coming on, and I wanted to make sure that my staff, something happened, that we would be able to continue on if someone got sick and infected the group of us. So I divided my staff in half. Unfortunately, and you'll see why in a minute, we were right in the midst of the beginning of the COVID and the pandemic, and there was so much going on. We were all working, and I'm being literal, 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. The calls were coming in, we were tracing back, We were working with outbreaks in nursing homes. We've had calls and conference calls with, like I said, different entities that wanted help in preparing for the COVID virus and protected their employees. So we did that. In the meantime, we were trying to work towards a process if we would have to leave the office and move out. Made sure all of our folks had VPN so they could work from home and get into their internet here at the office. One of the problems that happened is we made sure we did that, but we didn't practice it. So the first few times it was a little difficult to have people work from home. A lot of our IT people were working overtime trying to help them, tutor them through that process. And even the virtual meetings were, I remember the first couple of times were pretty rough because we should have probably practiced that. But again, we were right in the middle of this pandemic, the beginning of it. And again, the staff that I put together on the one shift was all my epidemiologists. It was my disaster planner. It was my supervisor, myself, and others. And unfortunately, about like the last week or so of March, some of us started feeling a little ill. We thought maybe hay fever, allergies, whatever, little sniffles here and there. I mean, I look back and I can see all the issues. And then the Friday, I can't remember the date, but it was like the last Friday in March or the second Friday in March. I came down with a very bad headache on that Friday afternoon, and a couple of my staff members that I was working with were also complaining of headaches. So we ended up heading for home, and I talked with our commissioner, Dr. Zazinski, and he said, "Hey, there's something going on here." I said, "Nah, I mean, it was allergy season, and we've been working crazy, and I was very fatigued, but again, we were working like dogs." And I said, I don't think so. I think it's just the allergies or something like that. Well, he demanded that we all get tested. So at that point, the testing was very limited. We didn't have a lot of tests available. We were testing only first responders and medical personnel and those critically ill in hospitals. That's all that was getting tested. If you had symptoms, you were told you probably have COVID, stay home and take care of yourself, because the testing was not available. So we did get testing. I did not, I declined the testing, realizing that I had the symptoms of the other two that were getting tested at that time. And sure enough, we were notified that those two were both positive for COVID. And I was a probable case because I had the same symptoms. And unfortunately, that cohort that I put together, half of my staff, the other half was on another floor and didn't interact with us. Most of those had to be quarantined because we're in close proximity. Now, we know how to protect ourselves. We were 6 foot apart. We were trying to do any of our meetings as distance apart as we could, but we got it, and it went through us like wildfire. I probably in the end, within a week or so, I think we had 7 or 8 that were positive for COVID. And I'm telling you, we took the precautions. I mean, there was probably every 10 yards a bottle of hand sanitizer, and nobody would stand next to anybody or sitting in an office within 6 feet. But we ended up getting it. And eventually, the commissioner ended up closing the building just because we were just going through, especially my cohort. And we had it shut down for a number of weeks. We never shut down our operations. We still kept working. Some of us ended up, couple in the hospital. I had it for a few days, real bad, but we had to continue to work. And unfortunately, like I said earlier, there was a problem with the way I set my cohort up. All my epidemiologists, all my disaster prep, because we were so busy and I needed the help, were all on the same shift. So now I had to bring up the other shift, the other supervisor and that team. And thinking back, I mean, I was sick, my supervisor was sick, my lead epi was sick, my call center person was sick, about 3 other of the folks that worked with that group that were helping out with the testing at the drive-through and stuff like that were sick, and then the rest of them, majority of them were quarantined. So at the end, I mean, I do things different. I don't know if I would or not, just because we were so busy and I needed all the help I could. But we brought those folks in, and they did a wonderful job. Stepped right up, understood what they needed to do. I never stopped working. I had to work from home, but I kept going, and one of my supervisors that was ill also kept working to try to keep the staff, to educate them on exactly what they needed to do. The other thing I realized at the point was we never briefed the other staff in case something would happen. I mean, it happened so quick. I mean, we were just starting, and the next thing I know, by the weekend, the operation was, my cohort was basically done for that day, or for that few weeks or whatever it was. And I had to bring the other cohort up to speed very, very quickly. And again, they did a great job. We ended up bringing on our nursing staff. About 7 or 8 of those came up to help with our contact tracing. So it was an amazing time. We learned a lot. But there's a number of things that we needed to look at, and like everybody said, this was a great learning opportunity. Why waste a disaster? So we had a number of things we wanted to go over that you need to consider. You've already talked about the social distancing and some others, but some things I didn't hear from the other folks this afternoon was you need to take a look at your sick policy. Because what happens now if somebody has symptoms, and I look back at all of us, and we had very mild symptoms at the beginning, and if take a look back, and hindsight's 20/20, but anybody that has the sniffles, a cough, or anything like that, they should not come to work. But with our policy here and with a union contract, you have so many days, and if you don't have an excuse, you can get disciplined and all that sort. So we've relaxed our policy on taking days off sick, because if you think you're feeling ill or have minor symptoms at all, we'd rather have you stay home, because I don't need you to come in here and infect the rest of the staff. When you're COVID positive, when your symptoms start, you are infectious for 48 hours previous to that. So that's why it's important that you do separate your staff, because you may have somebody that is asymptomatic that could spread it. You may have somebody that is positive for COVID, but asymptomatic for 48 hours, and they could be perfectly fine in working with you, next to you. So you always have to maintain that social distancing, wear masks where you can. So it's been a real learning experience for all of us. If we could get into questions, I know it looks like we got about 10 minutes left. I could probably go on for days on how this process worked and how we worked through it. But remember a couple things: social distancing, always figure out how that works, vehicles, offices, virtual meetings from home, working from home, telecommuting. The other thing is the questionnaire. I think Mike mentioned it. It's very important that not only if you take your temperature, you should take your temperature of your staff coming in, but that questionnaire is very important, because what it does, it reminds them every day that, hey, I do have that. I do feel a little ill today, or I do have that. And that may be enough to exclude them and protect your staff. So with that, I'll just let it open up for questions. Kim, do you want me to throw it back to you?
Well, thank you, Dave. Victoria has a few questions. I think there's maybe less than 5 questions, so she'll just go ahead and start asking.
Sure. And if anybody wants to put any other questions in the question box, that's fine. This goes back to Abed for his presentation. The first question says, for emergency events such as a water main break or sewer backup, do all employees use face shields or face masks, or either of their choosing?
Yeah, both are available for them right now. And really, it all depends on the work that's being conducted. So if they are in the hole, they have the face masks, and also they have the face shields that they can use.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question for Patrick. How are you enforcing the mask rules with the employees?
Yeah, thank you. We have disposable masks as they enter the facilities, so they're there to grab. And then if you're entering the district facility, for example, we have front desk folks that make sure that those are that you're first taking your temperature and wearing a mask. If you in our garage facilities, it's the same thing. We take temperatures. We ask some of those questions that David talked about before. We have a certain set of questions that we ask them about how they're feeling and a few other things. And then our county managers in our facilities enforce that, especially when they're in like a common area inside. So obviously some of our jobs are, you can easily maintain social distancing when you're talking about mowing in a tractor and might be spot berming and things like that. So it's not like a general one size fits all policy, but it's when people are in close contact and especially indoors that our county managers make sure they enforce that.
Thank you. And then there's a general question for everyone. How should employees going back to work treat common places? For example, bathrooms, lunchrooms, hallways.
So I'll start with that. Any common area, I mean, obviously the social distancing when possible, but like hallways, elevators, things of that sort, as long as your folks are wearing masks and it's a short period of time, we would not consider that an exposure. The only time it's an exposure, per our case definition, if you're talking, sitting with someone in close proximity for more than 10 minutes or so. So passing in the hallway, going up and down an elevator or staircase, obviously the concerns would be in a break room, a lunch room, or any area that they would congregate. Those are the areas you need to make sure that they keep the social separation. And I'll tell you, it does work. Like at the time clock, if you put the X's on the floor, people just gravitate to those. If you don't have them there, they usually bunch up. And we've seen where at restaurants and even other places where they put those X's on the floor, it seems to work where people realize, hey, that's where I got to stand, and they don't bunch up.
Yeah, for us, the city of Toledo, what we have done in field operations, we provided all the equipment they need to sanitize, and we go periodically and sanitize everything. But at the same time, what we did with the time clock, just to kind of reflect on what David said, we did not require them to punch the time clock. They report directly to their vehicles in the form and make sure that they are there. Most of our crews get their work electronically on their tablets, and so we're trying to avoid that close proximity of employees when they come in the building.
And I can answer that as well. It's really no different than what we're already doing in our garages, and I think Mike might answer it similarly, but they are going to work, they are in common areas, but we're trying to reduce those common areas. We're trying to not have them congregate in tight spaces. Obviously, people need to use the restroom, so they should be wearing masks when they're in those common areas or face coverings. I think that as people come back to work, it's going to be very similar where, if you're in these common areas, you should be wearing masks or face coverings. If you're at your desk and in your office like I am now, you really don't need it. So I think those practices have already been established, and I think they're going to follow through with folks that are teleworking when they have to come back.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing the exact same thing. We have a policy in the office where basically if you're not sitting at your desk, you're wearing a mask inside the office. We've ordered, additional cleaning for our restrooms and common areas. So they now get cleaned twice a day. Our garage employees, they have the equipment they need that when they're done with the vehicle in the day, they wipe it down. Everything that they did to wipe it down. And like Abed said, we don't do the time clock anymore. We got rid of the time clock. Everything's done through tablets and or the foreman checks them in.
And I'll just add that, we're pretty much in line with what everyone else has said as far as employees go. But a little different approach is common areas that we rent, the facilities that we rent, that we're responsible for. So we're having general public come in and use our facilities now with the Restart Ohio, and we have to be in compliance with some of those state orders. So there's some expense there with the cost of sanitizing. We just purchased a new, I guess you could call it a sanitizing spray gun with a compressor that is food grade with the chemical food grade approved. So every time there's a rental, we have to go through that whole facility whether it be the restrooms, the general common area, and we need to sanitize. Same thing with opening of our parks, with the playgrounds. That we're looking at sanitizing. We're not quite sure how often we need to. That really hasn't come out with Restart Ohio, how we should be sanitizing that and how often, but we're taking those precautions. We're holding softball, baseball, youth tournaments. All those facilities, we need to keep those compliant, as those are huge common areas.
Okay, well, we are right on 1:30, so I don't want to hold anyone past the time we said we were going to be wrapping up. There are a couple of extra questions in the question box, which I'll make sure we send to our presenters, and they can just respond directly to the folks who posed those questions. So thank you, everybody, for such a wonderful webinar. I know, Kim, you probably want to make a couple of closing comments.
I just want to thank everybody for coming. And I really want to thank the 5 presenters. Your information was interesting and informative, and I'm sure that people are going to take it back and use some of it. And we'll see what happens in the future. But Northwest Ohio APWA, we're going to try to come up with some more of these and hope that people will participate, because we want to continue to help our public employees, even during this tough time, because I know training budgets probably are one of the first things that got cut when you're talking about, monies. So we want to be helpful and make these worthwhile. So keep an eye out for some more of these on different topics, and we'll try to be there for Northwest Ohio. And we want to thank everybody again. I think it was great. So this was our first one. And like I said, hopefully we'll have more of these.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Everybody stay safe and have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.